Nighttime thunderstorms have been a mystery for a long time, but beginning around 2012, much larger ones and masses of them began to form day and night, which have been baffling and extremely destructive, unusual in their appearance right from the bat. Here's what they generally look like, forming during the day, and yet they continue on into the night. And at 1 in the morning, they're still growing strong. This happens almost every night. In the morning, we wake up and we see this sort of thing on an all too frequent basis. And it's so frequent, it's like you don't even think about it anymore unless, you're one of the people stuck in one of those cars. And yet, without batting an eye, gigantic forms at night. And this was actually near me in Ellicott City, where one of those formed. This is our common sight, and I'm not going to be putting them all down here, but just as a reminder that this is not just an abstract subject, but is extremely important. 1,000-year rainstorms, 500-year rainstorms, we see them all the time. As they form, there's another phenomenon that takes place, this strange, powerful outward expansion, which itself has its own effects. One of these formed right near where the now sadly famous duck boat encountered it. It was calm until that thing hit. Let's not leave out tornadoes, which in the old days, nighttime was the safest, and according to standard meteorological description, they form because of heat from the sun baking the ground, as well as the geological lay of the land. But now, nighttime is the most dangerous time. My interest actually started in these trails that would leave and create these dense cirrus, but not before too long. Much more of it came in, much denser, that was not connected to any form of trails that were anywhere in the area. And characteristically, it could cut off convection to lower clouds and would have usually a thick, dense blanket underneath. It could go on for as long as 18 straight days and nights had seen overcast. Nonetheless, while they look like that might be from a jet contrail or whatever it might be coming from, when we look on Intellicast or on NASA Worldview here, we see this is what they're coming from. It's quite easy. Just go look. And there's some of your tendrils right there like we just saw. Backing off, these things spawn off huge amounts of this strange new super dense cirrus that doesn't go away, covers everything. And looking closely, we see the same structure of development in them when they form. Straight line, highly regular points of formation of thunderheads, spreading into the white cirrus, and then torrentially raining even on formation. As we see here in a close-up, this is a typical where it's developing is at the left, and it's already raining torrentially, as if it rained torrentially up and then turned around and rained torrentially down. Here's how they start. 2/3 of a mile across. There's the nimbus from a much higher distance. We come in on it, and what do we see? There's your extension line, and then this cirrus is already 60 miles across and 150, 170 miles long. Another thing is that, unlike you would expect, the formation of clusters of thunderstorms, torrential rain, these another anomaly that has to be explained, and we're going to be able to by looking at the extension line. Here we see this is totally typical as the straightness and the regular segmentation. This is typical of its progress. Very counterintuitive. But when we look to the right, we see that, again, the same regularity of banding in the green rain sections. This is what's going to show us what's actually going on. Challenged in 2015, NOAA was forced to go out and try to explain these things. That's an image of one right there on their announcement of the Pecan study, and to their credit, they admitted that they had no idea. After spending tens of millions in every instrument available, they were unable to answer the mystery of nighttime superstorm formation. They also wanted to try to be able to predict them, but not being able to understand them, they can't predict them, so that failed as well. We're going to return to that in a moment. But undaunted, NOAA was able to come up with a new theory. We theorized galactic dark energy is coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. Wow. So they already tried to explain global warming, put it on global warming, but it didn't work, and it never is going to work. Dark energy comprises, three-quarters of the galaxy's composition. So who are we to say what it can and can't do? But here you have them forecasting these superstorms taking place at night, and yet they don't understand what causes them. This is a big problem. I'd love to spend time on it, but we're going to have to devote a whole nother video to how do they know when they're going to be there. But pretty colors do nothing to explain what's really there. Here's the most valuable part. Unstable air. They're talking down to you. Did you know? Unstable air and moisture are the main causes. All right, we're going to examine that right there. Unstable air and moisture, but especially the unstable air. Nonetheless, we've already determined now where does this super dense stuff that covers everything all the time come from. That's where they come from. Every night since 2012 and day, I have made a set of their formation, and they've been there almost every single day and night. I'm not going to show them all to you, obviously. Here's a typical development. It's already established on the right, and the extension is already very dramatic, super bizarre looking. When we look at the actual thunderstorm supercell where it's raining torrentially, we find even those are perfectly segmented in terms of the frequency is unusually and super unnatural. Here, when we look at a visual view, we see the segmentation of the extension line, and as it extends further, usually it's intersected by two matrices of waves of identical frequency in each separate matrix. They may have a different frequency in each of the two. Here you see the super regular formation of in the water vapor as it develops, and the extension line, you see the same even frequency and development, and it's in dry air. That yellow is dry air. Here the extension energy cuts right through that normal cloud on the left. Again, we see the structure, but here we see a right angle. So we're going to look at this guy a little more closely. At 2 in the morning, a new set started at the center. One went down to the right, the other down to the left at 90 degrees. It doesn't matter how large the field is, those are parallel, the development on a straight line, parallel lines. What can account for this? Well, let's look at, again, the development from inception, a very fine, smooth thing that's exceedingly small. Its sisters below, and then as they grow, they join, and as you look closely, you see concentric squares, not concentric circles. Growing further, then you see, of course, the torrential rain and the typical structure. Here's another example of that, which is the point of our inquiry. Spreading into the white slime uniformly. I call it white slime. Now let's look at the actual matrix in which the field itself is generated. There's our right angle friend. Very dramatic form all by itself. Looking in closely here, we see that the open field, there isn't much going on until right before that extension becomes on the right, and all of a sudden everything's segmented into perfect even frequency bands. The strongest one is oriented more vertically, and the weak from upper left to lower right, the other one's coming from the opposite direction at 50 degrees. But what do we find? Well, it's anything but unstable. You can't have coordinate graph paper perfection in waves and have an unstable atmosphere. So here's what we find. All supercells arise from highly regular waves in parallel lines at or near right angles. This is an outstanding example that shows the field of waves developing, becoming visible, and then directly out of it come these supercells, which are raining torrentially. That they're all those blossoming points, they're all raining torrentially already. The clear segmentation at both angles is present, and from out of it arise these fantastic forms, which maintain the segmentation, the even frequency at all stages, all the way right up to, well, it's now into the bouncing up and passing through the lower, into the lower stratosphere. So backing off, they're huge. Is there anything that we know of that can actually put such perfection into a fluid area such as the sky or water? Here's an example of one. When you look closely, you'll see that those points have raised very similar to the initial stage of development that we just saw in the supercells on a straight line. It's a machine. A machine can do it. But obviously projectiles are not involved in the creation of this, and yet we have this machine-like precision throughout the entire field out of which they are generated. This is a spectacular form where you see at the center it developing as we saw, but this fantastically powerful blast, if you will. I don't know what else to call it. It's not just an air downdraft. It's an expansionary ring of tremendous energy, which itself triggers more of the formation of these out of the field, which is full of waves at different angles, which is another big problem, right? I mean, how many different ways is the wind going to go and still be perfectly stable? When we look more closely, look on the left, you will see a wider or a stronger frequency of standing waves. Those are not actually moving, they're just stationary in place, which is pretty common in the development of these things. Well, so much for unstable air, and how do you get standing waves in such a chaotic environment anyway? Well, there is a way. At night, we see again the same formation out of the pointillistic even frequency generation, which is cutting in at a pretty stern angle to the original axis, and there they are, very regular points. This is the opposite of chaos. When we look at other parts of the world, especially this area, which is similar in its structure, they never develop there. So that's why she's saying, well, it must come out, the dark energy's coming out of the Gulf. We'll go there. There's a straight edge. There's the segmentation from upper left to lower right, which is super uniform. As it progresses, the form comes out of those. And another one comes from upper right to lower center, right there. That's at 90 degrees. Again, we look at the field and we see it turn into a very regular field transected at 90 degrees by perfectly even waves. At night, it's worthy to see it because this is what it is, and NOAA spent tens of millions of dollars, so we might as well take a minute and look at it. There it is, right there. Sun's over China, folks. Normally the structure of at least a single supercell, you have that, see that spiraling updraft? Well, that's circular. You would expect at the top then to have some form of circularity. But in fact, we don't have that. We have concentric squares and rectangles. In fact, the whole form is rectangular. As it develops, it's still the same. And it's all oriented on the original orientation of the field matrix, which you can see at the upper left. Just as fine, maintained all the way to the top. Again, this is happening. This happens day and night. 2 in the afternoon, 2 in the morning. There's your right angle. What does this look like from underneath or at closer range? Well, on the ground, and many people have began to awaken and see this. You can't have one layer of air moving against each other at 90 degrees and not have chaos. they go. So this is what is actually generating the superstorm, supercell, superstorms day and night in identical fashion. So what is that? That's the question. Well, there can only be another source of energy equal to the sun when overhead. That's right. Now we see why she's so excited. It's got to come from somewhere. So we need the full energy of the sun directly overhead during the entire night, every night. There is no other possible source of such energy in NOAA's standard scientific model except galactic dark energy. See, that's why she's excited. I mean, why don't they go into the Gulf? Perhaps as is represented here, this dark energy node, which is creating subnodes, which look like what we just saw. Maybe they would find a portal or something. And if they were in a submarine, perhaps they could go into the portal and see where it takes them. Perhaps we'll all be led to a place where we have fuller understanding that the universe is not the smooth Swiss watch, but is surrounded by dark energy, which we cannot limit. Our passage in the solar system through the galaxy could be having this effect. Perhaps she'll find the source of all light. Perhaps she'll find God, the God that she wants to be, the scientist, Doctor Who. Won't that be a barrel of cosmological morph monkeys? Now you understand her eyes. Now, as we saw, a machine can do it. An apparatus means machine. So it's method and machine for altering a region in the Earth's atmosphere. And then they say the next sentence is at least one. But for us, the region to be altered is energized by electron-cyclotron resonance heating. Heating. The sun is heating. This is a heating source. This is what they mean by electron-cyclotron resonance acceleration. It just travels around in a spiral along a straight line. But as it does so, it leaves water vapor in its tracks. And that's how we discovered the cloud chamber around 1900, which gave us the ability to understand subatomic particles. When they're accelerated, these particles leave water vapor in their trail. Well, if you have a bazillion quintillion, I guess you're going to have a lot of water vapor. In fact, they can increase everything ionized and accelerate it all. So, as they also say, a plume is constantly formed along a line, plus its expanding cloud won't go away, so an enemy can't outweigh this plume that they could use it for. Yeah, ions for cloud seeding. The foundation of that, the method and apparatus, came from the atomic and hydrogen bomb. The mushroom cloud is water vapor caused by the EMP burst and the microwaves being emitted by the radioactive fireball. Pretty big cloud right there, I'd say. So that it can do it. Now, can we find a plume? That would be inconvenient for them. Well, yes we can. It's been generating constantly down there in the Gulf, but this is the outcome. Ionized material does not go away. So we see, again, a tiny one grows until 8 hours later it's 1,000 miles long. So this does comport with what they say they can do. And central to us, any system of transmitting antenna can be used for our art. Any system, not just the harp or something at sea. And the system could be used to create super plumes, which they describe. Do they ever stay in one place? Right? Because we know that the air is always moving. That's like the one thing you can be sure of. All right, so this one starts, actually it started around before sunrise, that large mass, but then a new one started around 8 o'clock, and that's what we're going to look at. That's 2 in the afternoon. It's right where it started at 8. Notice again the extremely fine regularity even in the torrential rain sections. Sometimes I beat a dead horse, but it's always like that, and has been since 2012. So 3:30 p.m. it's right there. It's magic. Later, we see the extreme precision at which this point comes to a point, and the air is actually coming against it, and it's like a high-speed boat that's just causing this wake to go around itself. That's a pretty strong force to stay in place when it's water vapor under convection that's supposed to be causing it. It's the moist air that's drawing it all up, and you can expect lots of these storms. So 7, okay, we look up, there's nothing else. Where's the moisture? Where are all the storms? There's something over Colorado. Who cares? 7:45. It's right there. It's like moved about 5 miles. Maybe. 8 o'clock. See? There you go. NOAA's theory that the alternate source of energy equal to the sun is dark energy is sorely pressed there. These waves aren't even coming from the Gulf. Here's a set of 3 separate intersecting fields of even frequency waves. Here's 2 intersecting, and the most interesting is that highly regular striation. Looking at this Neocirrus, we find we can replicate its appearance pretty closely. Here's another example. And then probably the best capture that I have is of this wide array of waves and close-up of this one, which looks very unnatural right off the bat. Looking more closely, see the bands just stop at a straight edge, and then a black line follows. This cutting can be replicated exactly utilizing microwave simulator in an ambient temperature differential, which is what the atmosphere is, so it matches exactly. If we were able to control jet streams, powerful jet streams, perhaps in a counterclockwise momentum, we could then keep the air over the continent relatively calm, and then a system of lower power transmitting antenna could be used for purposes as described by the patent in its apparatus. Any system of transmitting antenna can be used for our art of altering and managing regions of the atmosphere, and the NEXRAD system is an excellent example of what could be used. Are they doing this? We'll look at that in another video. For now, the NEXRAD light show, which usually transpires over several hours right in the area where these superforms have already risen. Every one of those bursts is centered on a NEXRAD station. As to whether they're directly affecting it by causing it to continue, I don't know. It could be just that they're directing traffic or causing a pressure to guide and manage it. But here we have an area of standing waves. Then shortly thereafter we see the characteristic line as we examined it, from which each node comes a supercell. And as night falls, in that general region is where you'll see the NEXRAD emissions, which are very powerful, and at least in appearance. Whatever they're doing, they do not appear to be receiving the football, but throwing the football. These can take a wide variety of very interesting forms and look to be very powerful forms. Nonetheless, our purpose is the actual generation of these fantastic storms and their devastating rainfall effects, both on land and in the white sky above. Regardless of the position of the sun relative to the earth, they form an identical and extremely powerful manner, without any difference. 2 in the morning versus 2 in the afternoon. Though these have baffled NOAA, we now have a firm foundation upon which to formulate and express a different explanation. The goal is to be able to do so with the minimum number of assumptions. For now, in the end, everyone agrees that the nighttime supercell superstorms require the energy of the sun when overhead, but the only model that can provide that source, intersecting fields of specific microwave frequencies, heating and ionizing regions of the atmosphere over the U.S. which cause supercell superstorms. But don't feel too bad about our NOAA lady. She'll meet a nice scientician who'll treasure her and the ideas they shared.